I always say that a home has its own pulse, a quiet thrum you feel more than you hear. On Thanksgiving morning, that pulse was gone. I didn't notice right away. I'm 71, and my mornings have their own rhythm. I move slowly, not from frailty, but from habit. I've learned there's no reason to rush unless something is burning or someone is crying, and on most mornings neither is true. So at first, the silence didn't register as wrong. It was simply there, soft, cottony, settling over the house like the first snow. I slipped my feet into my old house shoes, the ones my late husband bought me the Christmas before he passed. I tugged my robe, flannel, faded but warm, around my shoulders and inhaled the lingering lavender from the sachet I keep tucked in the pocket. That scent always calms me. Always has. But that morning, it felt like a scent in the middle of a void. The hallway was unusually chilly. I shuffled toward the kitchen, expecting the familiar signs of my son and his wife. A light left on, a cabinet pulled open, maybe even the soft murmur of them whispering so as not to wake me. They'd moved in temporarily after their lease ended, and although the plan was to stay for only a few months, those months had stretched and stretched the way only adult children's plans can. Still, I didn't mind. I liked having people in the house again. I liked the hum of life, the footsteps, the clatter, even the mess. I missed mess after my husband died. A strange thing to miss, isn't it? But mess means movement. Mess means someone is alive nearby. I walked into the kitchen expecting the coffee machine gurgling, the refrigerator door swinging open, perhaps the smell of toast. Instead, I found nothing. Not messy. Not lived in. Clean. Pristine. Still. The quiet was so complete it made my ears ring. I reached for the kettle, filled it with water, and set it on the stove. The familiar SFX, soft metal click, comforted me. I needed that sound. Any sound. As I waited for the boil, I looked out the window. A bright cardinal sat on my winter feeder, pecking stubbornly because the seed had sunk below the rim. I smiled out of habit. That bird has been visiting for 3 winters now, but even its presence didn't ease the feeling crawling up my spine. Something was wrong. When the kettle finally whistled, I poured the water, made my tea, and sat down at the small 2-chair table by the window. The steam rose in soft curls. I held the cup between my palms and let the warmth seep into my fingers. That's when I turned, looked toward the hallway again, and finally saw what I hadn't noticed before. The shoes. Or rather, the missing shoes. My son's work boots, always left by the door. Gone. My daughter-in-law's white sneakers, normally kicked off in a hurry. Gone. The row of coats on the hooks by the entryway. His puffy jacket. Her camel-colored trench. Even the old scarf I knitted for him when he was 14. Gone. Slowly, I rose and padded to the front door. I opened it. The driveway stretched out in front of me. Empty. No car. No tire marks in the dew. No sign they had ever been there. At first, my mind tried to stitch together an explanation. Maybe they went to pick up something. Maybe they ran out for breakfast. Maybe they were surprising me with something for Thanksgiving. Yes, that seemed possible. They had mentioned needing cranberry sauce yesterday. Maybe. But as my thoughts twisted into hopeful knots, I noticed something else. A single envelope on the entry table. Folded neatly. My name in my daughter-in-law's handwriting. And just seeing it, that quiet envelope in the place where their keys usually sat, made my stomach drop. A note left behind always feels like a goodbye. I picked it up with trembling fingers. I didn't want to open it. Isn't that silly? At my age, you'd think I'd have learned that a note doesn't change a truth. It just sits there holding whatever hurt was already done. But I opened it anyway. Mom. We decided to spend Thanksgiving in Aspen with friends. It was a last-minute opportunity, and we didn't want to wake you. Back Sunday night. Don't worry about us. Enjoy your day. L&S. Aspen. Thanksgiving. A last-minute opportunity. I read it twice. Then a third time, as if the words would rearrange themselves into something kinder. They didn't. I don't remember sitting down, but suddenly I was on the bench by the door, the note limp in my hand. My heart didn't break. Heartbreak is loud, dramatic, like glass shattering. This wasn't that. This was a quiet, hollowing, a space widening inside me. I stood up again and walked back to the kitchen. My tea had already cooled. The cardinal was gone. Even the kettle felt heavier than usual when I lifted it to empty it. I checked my phone. No missed calls. Except one missed call from 1:13 a.m. From my son. No voicemail. He called me while I was asleep. And instead of waking me, instead of knocking on my door, instead of saying, "Mom, we're heading out, we love you," he left a note. A note. It wasn't anger that washed over me. Not first. It was confusion. A confusion so dense, so thick, it sat behind my ribs like fog. Why leave? Why today? Why without me? Why Aspen? I walked through the house slowly, touching everything as I went. The new sofa I'd bought last month, the 65-inch television, the air purifier she said helped her allergies, the French door refrigerator I'd upgraded because our old one didn't fit their meal prep containers. Everything they used daily, everything I had quietly paid for, still there. Except them. I opened their bedroom door. The bed unmade. Drawers left slightly ajar. The faint scent of her perfume in the air, grapefruit and vanilla. And in the corner, the suitcase spot. Empty. 2 suitcases gone. I closed the door. Breathed in. Breathed out. And that was the moment the first thread of suspicion, thin as a hair, slipped into my thoughts. Not quite hurt. Not quite betrayal. Not yet. Just knowing. A quiet sense that something in my house had been happening under the surface, something I had been too grateful, too eager to help, too hopeful to see. Thanksgiving morning. An empty house. And a note that felt less like information and more like revelation. I didn't cry. Crying comes later, when the truth has weight. This truth was still light, floating, not ready to land. But it would. It always does. I've always believed that when you love people, you help them. Simple as that. My generation was raised on casseroles left on doorsteps, neighbors who knew your children's names, and families who stayed close even when crowded living felt like stepping on each other's shadows. So when my son and daughter-in-law moved in after their lease ended, I didn't hesitate. Not even for a second. Just a couple months, my daughter-in-law said, twirling a strand of hair, smiling that bright polished smile she's perfected from too many social events. Until we find a new place. The market's crazy right now. Of course, I said. Stay as long as you need. A month passed. Then 2. Then 4. Their boxes slowly migrated into the garage, then into the guest room, then spread into the living room like vines. But I was lonely, if I'm being honest. After my husband died, the nights were too quiet. The days too long. The mailbox too empty. So when my son said, "Mom, could we stay just a bit longer?" I felt relief bloom quietly in my chest. They made noise. They used the kitchen. They filled the house with scents I didn't cook anymore, roasted garlic, sautéed onions, takeout containers with spicy curry. Sometimes I sat in the living room just listening to the life around me. It felt like breathing again. So when they needed things, I gave them things. A temporary home quickly becomes permanent when the person offering it doesn't set boundaries. And I didn't. I hadn't the heart. The first big purchase was the refrigerator. Our old one rattled, moaned, and finally exhaled its last cold breath one Tuesday morning. My daughter-in-law opened the door, frowned at the slight warmth, and said, "Ugh, this won't work for weekly meal prep." Within an hour, I was standing in the appliance store, pointing at a French door stainless steel model that cost more than the first car my husband ever bought. Then came the sofa. Then the 65-inch television. Then the espresso machine she absolutely needed to function. Then his new desk. Then the patio set, for better hosting. Then the air purifier. Then upgraded Wi-Fi. Then the subscription services, Hulu, Netflix, HBO, Paramount, all shared, though I never figured out who was sharing what. Each purchase felt small at the time, like tossing handfuls of bread to birds. Until one day you realize the loaf is gone. Still, I didn't mind. Or at least, I told myself I didn't. I liked being useful. I liked feeling needed. After my husband's life insurance came through, my son's eyes softened when he asked for help. I recognized that look. It's the same one he had as a boy when he needed lunch money or help repairing something he'd broken but was afraid to admit. I told myself it was just family. Just helping. Just supporting. Just being a mother. But help, once habitual, becomes invisible. And generosity, once expected, becomes currency. There were moments, small ones, when I felt something in their tone shift. When a thank you came slower. When a suggestion sounded more like a request. When a request sounded more like an expectation. And then, the overheard remark. It was about 2 months before Thanksgiving. I had come home from grocery shopping, pushing the cart with canned soups, fresh vegetables, their preferred oat milk, 3 types of cheeses they liked, and as I walked up the driveway, I heard voices through the open kitchen window. My daughter-in-law's voice, sharp and airy. Don't worry, we'll stay here until we're settled. It's convenient. Her money, not her. I froze. Her money, not her. The words slid into me like a cold blade. Not shouted. Not angry. Not said with malice. Casual. Thoughtless. As if I were a resource. A utility. A credit card with a pulse. I remember standing there with bags in my hands, the cold edge of a frozen turkey pressing against my wrist, feeling as if the ground had shifted a half inch to the left. I didn't confront them. You might think I should have. But I didn't. I carried the groceries inside, smiled, put everything away, and let the remark sit inside me like a stone at the bottom of a creek. It didn't hurt immediately. No, the hurt gathered slowly, sediment forming over weeks. Later, I would realize that overheard line was the first fracture. Thanksgiving morning was simply when the fracture finally split. Because as I walked through the house, seeing all the things I'd bought still sitting in place while they flew to Aspen without me, the remark echoed again. Her money, not her. And suddenly, every receipt flashed through my memory with stunning clarity. The fridge, $2,899. The sofa, $1,450. The TV, $1,199. The patio set, $799. The espresso machine, $349. The desk, $279. The purifier, $199. One by one, the purchases lined up like little soldiers in a row, each one saluting the truth. They stayed not out of love. Not out of connection. Not out of family loyalty. They stayed because it was convenient. My heart didn't break. It hardened. Not into anger, but into something steadier, weightier, stronger, clarity. I walked into my office, pulled open the bottom filing drawer, and took out the blue folder I had always kept tucked away, the one where I stored every major purchase receipt, warranty, and invoice. Just being practical, I always told myself. But in that moment, holding that blue folder, I realized practicality might save me. And that realization, that moment of quiet awakening, was the first step toward the plan I didn't yet know I would make. A plan that would turn silence into strength. The blue folder lay on the dining table like a declaration. I placed it there gently, almost reverently, as though I was setting down something sacred. In a way, I suppose I was. The truth, documented one thin sheet at a time. I opened it. Inside were receipts so crisp they still smelled faintly of printer ink. Best Buy, Home Depot, Wayfair, Amazon orders emailed to me, appliance installation invoices, Furniture delivery confirmations. Warranty stickers I peeled off and saved. A lifetime of being organized had led to this moment, this quiet, methodical unveiling. But I wasn't angry as I spread them out. Anger is hot, wild, unpredictable. This was different. Cool. Measured. Almost ceremonial. I arranged each receipt in order, forming a near-perfect grid on the table. The television. The refrigerator. The sofa. The desk. The patio set. The purifier. The espresso machine. Everything I purchased. Everything in my name. Everything that could be proven. Beside the folder sat my laptop, already open to my email account. I searched for Best Buy, receipt, order confirmation, delivery, invoice, and one by one, new digital papers appeared before me like obedient witnesses. I saved every file to a structured folder on my desktop. Home property, purchased items, receipts. I didn't know exactly why I was doing it. Not yet, but my instincts guided me with unwavering certainty. And then, almost as an afterthought, I clicked my Ring camera app. Still logged in. Still active. Still recording. I had never shared access with them. A small relief curled warm inside my chest. I clicked through the timeline. There they were last night, 12:58 a.m., hauling suitcases to the car. He whispered something I couldn't hear. She laughed softly. They loaded the trunk. Then another clip at 1:13 a.m. My son calling my phone, turning back to glance at the house. Then they left. I replayed it twice. Not to hurt myself, but to understand. Clarity matters. After I closed the app, I sat back and stared at the receipts, the blue folder, the evidence stacking itself into a quiet mountain of truth. I didn't cry. Instead, I felt something settle inside me, a sense of alignment. Like pieces of me that had been scattered were now clicking back into place. My generosity had been misinterpreted. Not as love. Not as family. But as availability. And availability, when unboundaried, becomes exploitation. That realization hit me slowly, like light spreading across a room at dawn. That's when the plan began forming. Soft at the edges, delicate at first, but sharpening with every breath. Not revenge. Not punishment. Just reclamation. A reclaiming of what was mine. A reclaiming of dignity. A reclaiming of boundaries. A reclaiming of my own home. I made a list. With a pen. On paper. The way I always do when something matters. Items to repossess. Utilities to change. Accounts to secure. Locks to replace. Rooms to restore. Each line steadied me. Then came the practical steps, the ones I executed with calm precision. First, the movers. I called a reputable company I'd used years ago when we downsized my late husband's workshop. A kind man named Gerald answered. I explained I needed assistance moving several large items from one property to storage. He didn't ask unnecessary questions. I appreciated that. Sunday at 10 a.m. work for you, ma'am? He asked. Yes, I said. The same day they planned to return. A poetic coincidence, or perhaps instinct guiding me again. Next, utilities. I logged into the accounts and updated the passwords. Electric, water, Wi-Fi, streaming services, cloud storage, Ring camera. Each update felt like closing a door gently but firmly. Then I called my bank. Spoke to a representative. Set up account alerts. Ensured no unexpected charges could slip through unnoticed. Then I emailed myself the Ring footage. Downloaded copies to an external drive. Printed screenshots of their bags leaving. Printed the Thanksgiving note. Not for drama. For documentation. Life has taught me this. People forget words. People argue about memories. But documents do not lie. I opened the blue folder again and slipped the new printed pages inside. Evidence accumulates quietly, a paper truth growing heavier with purpose. For the rest of the day, I cleaned. Not out of frustration. Not to erase them. But because cleaning soothes me. The rhythmic motions, folding, stacking, sweeping, wiping, gave my hands something to do while my mind found balance. While vacuuming their room, I found crumbs on the rug, a half-empty perfume bottle, a shopping tag from some expensive athleisure brand. Little reminders of how they lived comfortably on the support I provided. I placed everything neatly on the dresser. Not from pettiness. From closure. Then I went to the spare bedroom, once my sewing room, now cluttered with their unused boxes. I opened each one slowly, checking the labels. Winter clothes. Seasonal decor. Kitchen stuff. Don't throw. I didn't touch their personal belongings. I respected boundaries even when mine had been disregarded. But the items I had bought? Those would be going with me. That night, I made myself a small dinner. Roast chicken, green beans, mashed potatoes. Nothing festive. Just comforting. I set one plate at the table. Just one. The emptiness didn't ache the way I expected. It felt clarifying. I ate slowly, savoring every bite. Not because the food was extraordinary. It wasn't, but because I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Authority. Autonomy. Control. I went to bed early, lavender sachet under my pillow, the house quiet but no longer hollow. Before sleeping, I whispered into the darkness, not as a wish but as a promise. I am not a convenience. And the darkness, honest as always, held that truth without judgment. Sunday would come soon enough. And with it, the reclaiming. Sunday morning arrived crisp and bright. Sunlight filtered through the blinds in soft golden stripes, the kind that make dust motes look like drifting stars. I rose early, brewed tea, and wrapped my robe tighter around my shoulders. The lavender sachet brushed my wrist as I moved, releasing a familiar calm. At exactly 9:48 a.m., the moving truck pulled into the driveway. SFX, diesel engine rumbling softly. Gerald stepped out, clipboard in hand, nodding respectfully when he saw me. "Morning, ma'am," he said. "Good morning," I replied, steady as stone. Two movers followed him, young men with polite smiles, calling me ma'am with genuine courtesy. I appreciated that more than they knew. I guided them through the list. The sofa, the television, the French door refrigerator, the desk, the patio set, the espresso machine, the purifier. Each item checked, confirmed, lifted, wrapped, and carried with the quiet choreography of professionals. SFX, packing tape stretching, boxes sliding, footsteps across hardwood, distant thump of furniture being secured. I stood with my clipboard, mirroring Gerald, checking off each item I had bought. I felt no guilt, no shame, only clarity. Every piece had been paid for by me, documented by me, and would now be reclaimed by me. My hands didn't tremble. My voice didn't waver. I was calm, almost serene. By 11:27 a.m., everything on the list was in the truck. "Where to, ma'am?" Gerald asked. "Storage unit on Maple Street," I said. "Under my name." He nodded, tipped his cap slightly, and the movers secured the final straps. They were almost finished when I heard it, the distinctive crunch of tires on the gravel driveway. My son's car. They were home. The car door opened, then slammed. Hurried footsteps approached. Voices, sharp, frantic, rising. "What's going on?" my son shouted, rounding the corner. My daughter-in-law gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Why is the couch? Why is the refrigerator? What are you doing?" I didn't meet their panic with panic. I simply held up my clipboard. "These are my items," I said softly. "I have receipts for everything." "That's not the point," my son snapped. "You're being ridiculous." Ridiculous. A word adults use when they want to dismiss someone's truth. "I'm being responsible," I corrected. My daughter-in-law stepped forward. "We lived here." These were part of the house. No, I said gently. They were part of my generosity. And then, perhaps the first time in years, silence fell between us. Real silence. Not absence. Understanding. What is this really about, Mom? My son asked, voice wavering. So I told him. Not with accusation. Not with shouting. Just truth. I overheard you, I said quietly, 2 months ago. In the kitchen. You said this house was convenient. Her money, not her. His face drained of color. My daughter-in-law's eyes widened in alarm. I didn't mean, he started. You did, I said softly. Maybe not with malice. Maybe not with thought. But you meant it. He opened his mouth again, but the officer approached then, the one I had called earlier to be present during the move, just to avoid misunderstandings. Officer Daniels, calm, neutral, professional, nodded to each of us. Everything appears to be in order, he said. Ownership documents are clear. You're within your rights, ma'am. My son looked at the officer, then back at me, stunned. You called the police? No, I corrected gently. I called for verification, not confrontation. The officer offered a small, sympathetic smile. This is simply a property clarification. Nothing more. My son's shoulders sagged. My daughter-in-law looked at the moving truck, the empty spaces behind her, and then at me with something unspoken in her eyes. Maybe guilt. Maybe disbelief. Maybe both. What are we supposed to sit on? She asked finally, voice small. That, I said gently, is for you to decide. The same way I had to decide what I needed. The movers finished. The truck doors closed. SFX. Metal latch locking. Gerald approached. We'll meet you at the storage unit, ma'am. Thank you, Gerald, I said. I walked past my son and his wife. Not avoiding them. Not dismissing them. Just moving forward. At the storage unit, the movers arranged everything neatly. When it was done, I tipped them generously. Then I stood alone in the quiet hallway, breathing in the smell of dust and cool concrete. It felt like a new beginning. That evening, I didn't return home. Not because I was afraid, but because I no longer wanted to live in a place where I had been diminished. I checked into a small hotel for one night. The next day, I toured a senior apartment community I'd been reading about. Warm, bright, filled with people my age who smiled with their eyes. I signed the lease. Within a week, my belongings, the ones that were truly mine, filled a cozy, sunlit apartment overlooking a courtyard with a fountain. I joined their Thursday book club. I attended watercolor classes on Tuesdays. I started eating dinners in the community dining room, where laughter echoed and no one expected anything from me except my presence. I made friends. Real ones. Ones who didn't see me as convenience. In the evenings, I sat on my small balcony with a cup of chamomile tea, watching the sun paint the sky in soft purples. The peace I felt wasn't loud or triumphant. It was gentle. A warm settling. Sometimes my son texts. Sometimes I respond. Healing isn't linear, but it is possible. And I learned something important, something I want you listening to hear. Silence isn't weakness. Sometimes silence is where we gather our strength. If this resonates, tell me where you're listening from. I always love knowing who's out there on the other side of these stories.